Um, Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. You made it to the last panel, so congratulations. So today, as Gina was saying, that we're going to talk about how to decipher marketing reality versus BS. And let's be honest, a lot of you guys who sell the BS is here today. But the good news is, I'm not going to name you. We're not going to name who you are, but we all know who you are. So, and obviously, the other good news is that it's 20 minutes to happy hour, which is why most of you are still here. So we'll make this as fun and painless as possible. So I'm going to kick it off. I'm going to let my wonderful panelists introduce themselves and tell you who they are and what they do.
Hi, so my name is Rose. I'm the Senior Marketing Specialist at Ludia, and we focus on licensed games. So you might know us from Jurassic World or Jurassic World Alive, so that's been our big hit of the summer.
I'm Rina Nagashima. I'm a mobile marketing manager at Apalon Apps. We're a global mobile development company specialized in utility, lifestyle, and productivity apps. Most recently, we won a Webby Award for the productivity app.
I'm Sam Guertin. I work at Tubi TV. We are a video streaming platform.
My name's not on there, but I'm Roz. Sorry, late ad. I'm Roz, and I'm a marketing manager at Kabam, and I'm currently working on the game Marvel Contest of Champions.
Great. So we have a lot of different experiences here. And I know that a lot of you guys work on, really big budgets. You have some great brands and apps that you work for. So you know that you're getting a lot of people in our industry who are constantly emailing, approaching you guys, and wanting them to, for you guys to work with them. So I'm curious to hear what has been some of the craziest sales pitch that you've received, whether it's in person, in the mail, snail mail, or on an email, LinkedIn. We've been all there, so we know all these methods. So if any of you girls want to kick it off?
I've got a couple. I actually received a letter from a UA network that was handwritten and had a picture of Justin Timberlake on it and was like, I found your address on a subway line in New York City. And he's like, now that I have your attention. And I was like, okay, we're just gonna push that to the side. And it's a very interesting way to sort of get someone's attention, but you also have to be careful not to be a little bit too outlandish when you kind of try these methods.
Are you a GT fan? Is that
I'm not. I was Backstreet Boys all the way. Picked the wrong boy band.
I know they say it's really important that you know who you're talking to, so actually know their name. This is a while back, but I had a vendor kept calling me Rihanna. My name is Rina, but you can call me Rihanna all day, but he just kept calling me that. It just never really clicked. Needless to say, we never partnered, but it's really important to make sure that you actually have the right name.
That happened to me as well, and the ironic part was the salesperson was also named Sam, so it should be the easiest name to remember, but he couldn't get it.
I face a lot of difficulties with a name, too. I usually get mistaken for a guy, even though my picture's in the icon, so I don't really understand why. But on the story front, something similar to Rose, I got outreached to by a guy, and the subject line was, did I leave my umbrella at your place? And so I was immediately taken back, but my curiosity was piqued. So I opened it, and he said, no, we don't know each other like that, but here's my product. So safe to say we laughed, but no meeting.
Wow. Okay, don't do any of those stuff, okay? Remember people's name. So when you're getting a lot of these crazy sales pitch and you're getting a ton of emails and people what are some of the watch outs where you literally, as soon as you hear these buzzwords or terms from anyone that's trying to sell to you, that you're going, whoa, this is immediately a red flag?
I've come to realize that so many partners will just say 100% this, 100% that. I think it's come to a point where we really need to be realistic about how sure we are about the traffic that you're driving. Nothing is actually 100%. We know that you have fraud. So I think it's just a use of words. You just have to be careful with how they present themselves and just be cautious.
I mean, to also piggyback off that, one person's 100% is not the same to another company. So sometimes if you say we've increased traffic by 300%, if you've increased traffic by 5 people, sure, that's 300%. But it's not, it's such a big number to see 300%, but you also have to understand what the variables were before the fact. So as soon as I see like very large percentages, I'm always a little bit hesitant.
AI. I don't think anyone knows what that means. Your ad network does not run AI.
I also feel like a lot of ad networks talk about having exclusive direct partnerships because that's just what everyone wants these days. But when you really get down to it, asking the serious questions about that, you end up finding out that they bought their traffic from somewhere else or it's just media buyers. So there's really no differentiating factor in that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that we get a lot of those 100%. I love it when they say like 10,000%, because then that gets my attention. Because nobody wants 100% anymore, right? We're like, we want more now. So I guess there's a lot of crazy buzzwords and terms out there. But in terms of kind of thinking about, kind of like tips that you can really help, like, people in the audience here, like not just obviously the red flags and the words that kind of trigger like immediate, like, hey, I don't know if I want to work with these people, but like what can they actually put in an email and a sales pitch that is going to make you open to it? Because really, yeah, there's a ton of bad stuff out there, but in amongst it all, there is some good, and I feel like sometimes the good salespeople get caught up in that cycle and they're not able to really meet with people because they just get put into the same bucket. So are there kind of like good tips or best practices that you feel like if you were approached in this way would be so much more open to it?
Free media. Yeah.
Like a free trial?
Like free installs, yes. Yeah. Free trial, yes.
At any particular free, like $5 free or $1,000 free?
Anything,
Just free.
yeah.
Okay.
So we get a lot of emails, and a lot of them just hit spam filters that sometimes I don't even get to see the filters before they're flushed. But anyone who just kind of consistently but respectfully kind of follows up every couple of months and is like, hey, any news? Would you like to try something? Again, if they can offer like a free, an incentive or like a credit to purchase as well. We kind of do at Ludia, we really do our due diligence. We really like to partner with people that we trust and we've built that relationship first. So a lot of times it's a long-term partnership before we start doing any spending or signing any contracts. But yeah, like someone emailing me every day after I told them I'm not interested is a surefire way to just get blocked. But someone who's like, hey, you know what? It's been a few months, just catching up. How is everything? I think that's a really good way to sort of build that relationship.
Kind of like dating, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
a little bit like dating.
So at Kabam, we developed a prospective partner questionnaire that we deliver upon receiving the first sales pitch email. Yeah. So the questions in it basically help weed through all of these buzzwords and these terms that people throw into their sales pitches and really get down to the meat of the conversation. So it helps us decipher, is this a good fit? Should we talk to them? And it really helps that first conversation, if we do decide to move forward, go smoothly, and we can really get down to the most important topics we need to discuss.
Great.
I was just gonna say, we'd also do the questionnaire thing, which is a really smart idea. It helps weed out a lot of the partners. But if I'm getting a LinkedIn email or just a separate email, I will open your email and really look into it. If you bring value and you actually explain what you do, instead of saying, we have global traffic, we can get you a CPI of X amount of dollars in Latin America, US, Europe, wherever, and that's it. Like, I'm not gonna further entertain your conversation. So as long as you kind of explain yourself and put forth what you're trying to bring value to us, then I'm more than happy to talk to you.
I'm curious to know if any of you guys have ever leveraged your peers in the industry when you are trying to vet some of these sales pitch. And, I know that I get a ton of email, I'm sure you all do, that says, I work with Kabam, I work with this, and, and you just go, do you really? Do they really know you're even using their names? And, how do you even follow up on that? But I'm curious to hear from you guys if you've ever leveraged your industry to kind of figure it out and how you go about doing that.
Yeah, I flat out emailed my counterparts at different studios and just been like, hey, is this traffic any good? Yes? No? What do you think of them? And then sort of base my opinions on whatever feedback I receive.
We've kept a pretty tight relationship with ex-UA managers at Kabam, so we have a really open communication line, and we're always floating ideas off each other, even though we're technically competitors now. It's still really helpful to bounce those ideas off each other, talking about specific companies, campaign strategies. It's only helping all of us overall, so.
There's a lot of vendor-free Slack channels as well. So if you're a UA manager, you get, like Grow.co has one. So that's a really good place to float ideas and get feedback from the industry.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize is that we do our due diligence, right? We do check their credentials and referrals. So I think that that's something that people forget, that if you're going to use, like, you work with X company, we will go and talk to those X company, you know. And I love it when I get in presentation, because I'll email my friend and say, they used your name in a presentation, you know, and then kind of like get them in trouble for it. Okay, great. So, but I'm pretty mean to salespeople, but so I think one of the things that I think all of us used to is that, okay, we'll give, so now you guys have like gone through the sales pitch, you'll give some of these sales pitch a try, you'll start to get free media, you know, and you actually start to implement. And then I guess you get told that, hey, this is how it's going to work, we're going to get you this. But in reality, when the actual campaign goes live and that doesn't really happen, I'd love to hear from you guys, like, how do you deal with that when you are working with these vendors? Like, how transparent are they once there's an issue, right? Because it's all good, everything works well, but once it's not working well, like, how are they owning or taking ownership of, you know, what is actually going behind the scene?
Specifically on the topic of fraud, getting a make good is one thing, and I really see that as the easy way out. Like, it would be much more helpful for both parties if we received some sort of actionable plan of why did this happen, how did this happen, and how are we going to prevent this publisher from sneaking into our inventory from another direction. That's not a very common thing in the industry these days, and I think that it needs to be.
I mean, for us, when we kick off campaigns, we have very aggressive ROAS goals. And we're usually very upfront about what we need to hit in order to keep maintaining our campaigns. And so, you know, we'll get a lot of promises, and then suddenly, we're not getting what was promised. And then sometimes it's a little bit of a back and forth, and we try to work on optimizations, try to like work with them. But after a while, we do need to be like, okay, so what's our next steps? And it can tell you a lot about a company, how they sort of react to those messages.
I thoroughly appreciate when a partner is proactively reaching out to you and say, we actually found some fraud in our network and we're going to, you know, cut it out from your monthly spend. It doesn't happen often, and I really pride my relationships with those partners because they're very upfront with you, very truthful and honest about what kind of inventory they're running. That further wants me to continue my relationship with them down the road.
Yeah, and how many of them do you think are really, you know, take ownership of what the issue is, right? Instead of like saying, oh, it's maybe an adjust issue, they're not tracking properly. Like, how do you deal with that when you know, they just won't come to the table with the solution but blame? It's kind of like a blame game sometime in the UA space of who's really responsible. So I'd love to hear from you guys in terms of like, how do you tackle that when you just feel like you're not getting the right answer? Like, you know, how do you like navigate that? You fire them.
Almost, you know, if you realize that you're sort of at an impasse and they're not giving you what you need, then you sort of have to make that call. And sometimes that call is just stopping everything. And that's usually when they start getting the message.
I've practiced that plenty of times, and it works. It just kind of lights a fire under their butt.
I think honesty is always like the best policy, right? Like, own up to it, and then you can kind of improve on the relationship. So talking about, I know we talked a lot about on the kind of like network side, and the next kind of, I'd say, area where I feel like we get a lot of, you know, in the UA space, a lot of you guys run a lot of channels, and it can be quite time-consuming, right? So sometimes you leverage agencies to kind of help you manage some of that work. And I feel that one of the most important relationship is figuring out how to manage that agency relationship well so that your campaign can be successful. But I think when you're building up, or I think for these people in the audience who are considering using agencies, what are some of the things that you've been told before you're like signing on that dotted line and in reality, like, it's very different when you actually have that working relationship and you actually have started, setting campaigns and sending them live. Like, how have you actually seen how it might have differed from what they've actually told you and how it's been when it's actually implemented?
So we do work with an agency, and they're actually here today. So we actually have a really, really great relationship with them. We have weekly calls. There's like text relationships, so we're texting each other. We're kind of always on call with each other. So if there's a problem, if something's not looking right, like, we're on top of it. And we've been working with them for a long time now, so we've really just had that time to build a relationship, and we trust their recommendations, and we know that they have a handle on everything they're doing for us. So it really is just kind of doing your due diligence. If you're new to using an agency, kind of ask around, see what the general feedback is. There's a lot of people, cold emails that'll come in, and they'll overpromise on things, so just do your background checks.
What are the kind of like the common things that you definitely hear from an agency sales pitch that definitely makes you feel like this is, like, I should be watching out for this?
Whenever they offer to do everything for free, that's usually a flag, because it's almost like they're so desperate to try to get you in, they'll just offer the entire, like, everything they do for free. And that to me is kind of like, well, if you had offered me a discount on everything you're doing, sure, but to offer it completely free, I'm like, okay. Like, what's going on? What's wrong that you need the account so badly?
A big thing for me is when an agency offers creative localization in like a crazy number of countries. Because I'm just wondering how exactly you're doing that. If you have a native speaker of every country sitting in your office, 100%, I'm signing up. But if you're just putting it through Google Translate, I can do that too. So being clear about that is really important.
Yeah, I think a lot of times there's a lot of overselling and under delivery. Is that a word? Under delivery? Yeah, sorry. It's been late. No, it's late in the day. Okay, so in terms of, I guess, you're working with these agencies, and I think, for everyone in the audience here, there's definitely criteria that you can really call out, like, what is BS and what is not. So how do you, and Rose, you were saying that you trust the agency you work for, and I was like, how do you build that trust? Like, how do you know they're not just talking out of their ass? Sorry.
You start kind of on a small spend. You let their actions prove that they're worthy of your trust. So if they can consistently deliver what they're promising, then you sort of like, okay, you're going to branch out a little bit more. You're going to give them a little bit more budget to play with. And it's sort of, that's it, build that relationship. But you wouldn't go all in right away.
I think bake-offs are smart. I also think you should be shopping for people, not for case studies or metrics or portfolio. You should make sure you're talking to account managers or the head of account manager. Salespeople can promise a lot of stuff, but they are far removed from the daily job. I've worked on both the agency side and the client side. So you should be looking for the individuals that are working on your account rather than a big name or a good track record. It's definitely down to the people who are working on your account all the time. So shop for people instead of an agency.
The intangibles like that really make a difference, I think. And it's also part of our responsibility to meter our own expectations of what the agency can do. So if one of your initiatives is to try every alpha and beta product that a company has to offer, understand that the agency's tools may be rendered useless the second that that's available because it's not live to everybody yet. So know their relationship with the company that they're working on, and know if your relationship is closer with that company. So.
Yeah, I totally think that's so important. And what Sam was saying about shopping for the people. I'm curious, when you're shopping for people, I know that sounds weird, but what kind of the criteria should these people have that you really in that process of really kind of ticks the boxes for you when you're assessing whether this is the right team that you want to work with?
Technical aptitude is up there, and data literacy. I think those are the two. I think obviously communication skills are important, but agencies are hopefully hiring people who can speak on the phone and read and write. So hopefully they've gotten that covered for you. So technical aptitude. I think a lot of people in this industry have a very high level understanding of how everything works, but I find the best people and the the most creative people are people who understand how all the gears are turning underneath everything. So I like to find people who like to take things apart and put them back together before they claim that they know something. You just have to ask a lot of detailed questions to find those people, and eventually you'll weed out the ones who don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, no, totally agree. So I think those are all really good points about like looking for the right people, but checking what they really can do. And I'm sure, like, do you guys go through, especially when you're working with any agency, do you doing any referral process? Like, are you actually checking their references? Are you doing any kind of that? So it's like a more external approach to assessing the team before you work with them versus just saying, okay, I think they have everything I need. Like, I trust that, and I'm going to move forward with that.
Yeah, I think that it goes back to the question you asked about asking your peers about networks, agencies. I think you should do the same. I've never checked references before. That's a good idea. I'm going to start doing that. But bake-offs are a great way, like you said, start slow and have them test them against other agencies and see what their competitive nature is. That's always an interesting environment to analyze an agency under. But yeah, I guess check references. It's a great idea.
Yeah, I have this thing where if like I don't get a reference by a certain time frame, then I'm like, they're not good, So it's not just references, but how quickly can they get the references, right? Because if you work with good agencies, they will have a list of clients that's willing to vouch for them, and if they take 2 weeks to find one name, like I think that should be kind of like a watch out. Okay, we're actually almost time, so I'm going to open it out to the audience for any questions. If you don't have any because you want to drink, that's fine. I'm not going to pressure you to ask a question, but hey, this one doesn't want to drink. Sorry, what's the...
Just calling him out.
Hi, as someone who often works in the weed of daily optimizations and management for the channels, we often get a lot of best practices advice from a lot of our channel partners. And oftentimes you can't help but wonder whether or not there should be a sense of skepticism when you hear that advice. I want to ask, what would be your best recommendation in terms of kind of discovering whether or not that advice is true to whether or not it's in your best interest to perform your own metrics?
Data. And then a lot of people tell you it's a best practice. Like I said, they have a high-level explanation on why it's good. But if they can tell me like what is happening technically, it's like skin products. People are like, oh, it has hydro whatever in it, and it's going to make you look super young and beautiful. Like, what's happening on a cellular level that's making that happen? So that's what you should ask, but growth related. I think it's important to be able to break things down to a very granular level, and then any data that you can have to back things up is important. They should have that.
I feel like you need to know your product as well, just because sometimes we work with networks and they'll come in and we'll be like, you need to be at this CPI to have any sort of a fill, and we're kind of like, no, that's triple what we normally do. So we're going to go with our CPI, and if we see that we're not hitting what we need to, then we'll incrementally increase. But definitely know your product and know your benchmarks.
Any other questions? Nope. Great. Okay, thank you. Let's give it up for the panelists.